To unpack this issue, to my immediate left is Ibrahim Dean with the Afro-Middle East Center. Immediately after him, Dr. Bashir Osman, who's with the Sudan Solidarity Group in South Africa. And immediately to his left is Sabir Abu Sadia from SPLM North in Sudan. Let me start with both of you. First, Dr. Osman and Mr. Sadia. I think the issue is, some have said this is the most significant protest we've seen in Sudan against Bashir ever. Would you both agree? Let me start with you, Dr. Osman.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. I would agree with you that this is the biggest challenge that al-Bashir is facing during his reign of terror and oppression of the Sudanese people. Having said that, this is not the first time. Throughout his rule, people of Sudan has tried several times to send the message to him clearly that we need change, we need democracy, and we need rule of law. Looking at the Sudanese history, this is the third revolution, an incredible history of the ability of peaceful change of dictators. Okay,
let me then come to you, Mr. Sadia. We've seen 8 political parties who've left the government supporting this protest. Do you think it's an indication of the loosening of the grip of power by President Bashir?
Thank you so much, Bisha, and thank you for having me. And it's my honor to be here, and wish that this year to be silencing the guns in our beloved continent. Precisely what happened, Bashir issue, and those people who jumping the ship because of supporting, because they say that their way of life in Bashir cannot take them anywhere. But it's more likely it's just a playing. It's not right, true, precisely that, you know, why they jump the ship, you know. They don't have a precisely program that why they jump the ship. However, we accept them, because we need to get rid of Bashir.
When you say we accept them, are you saying that you are part of this national front for change that is pushing for change? How many parties does it involve exactly?
Absolutely, we are part of the whole alliance. You see, today is the first time in history of Sudan the whole opposition united against Bashir. Just step down. All the walk of life of Sudanese.
How many parties are there?
I have no figure exactly, but all the oppositions, yeah.
Let me come to you, Mr. Dean. Is this concentrated to even loyalist areas of President Bashir, or is this really infiltrating into the NCP party as well?
I mean, I think this is the significance of these protests, is that in August last year, 2018, the NCP issued a call that, or advocated amending the constitution to allow Bashir to stand again. And, many were unhappy at this, even within the military ranks. And we then saw a slight purge. The intelligence chief was removed. Many generals were removed in September 2018. So these protests have happened, and the change in this, or the difference in these protests is, as Sabir said, one is the opposition parties have joined for the first time, most of them, including the very influential Ummah party. And secondly, many even within the NCP, many previously close to Bashir, also, for different reasons, want to see him removed or not being allowed to stand a third term. So, with domestic pressure within Sudan is unprecedented in the sense that it's very widespread, and also within the NCP.
Yes,
yes, Dr. Osman.
May I add here, actually it is the widespread, it is the revolution, a full-scale revolution that has been raging throughout the country, joined by every sector of the community, of the Sudanese society, the youth in the forefront, the women, the religious sectors, the parties, and central to that is the Sudanese Professional Association, which has been so far the mind behind organizing the movement and the revolution. The second thing that I need to emphasize is that this revolution is a peaceful revolution. And that is very clear in the chantings, in the slogans. The people are calling for freedom, peace, and justice.
But the regime has acted differently.
Yes, the regime acted differently. In fact, they tried to incite divisions among the people of Sudan. And the response came to him loud and clear. We are all Darfuris.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think just to add what Bashir, Dr. Bashir said, that, you know, it has become unfair that to mention to brutalities of the Bashir regime is clearly product of the political Islam that is divide us in Sudan, divide Sudan into two, and it might divide them into four. So our crisis, our cancer in Sudan is a political Islamist violence, which is entering the society, in our society,
so
dividing.
How is that characterized? How do we unpack that? How do we understand that?
What you mean, to understand the political Islam?
Yes.
It's an ideology. It's an ideology ruling Sudan for the 30 years, dividing Sudan to two. Why South Sudan is gone? Because of political Islam.
Is there
imposing Sharia law, and the Southern Sudan say we cannot accept the Sharia law.
Dr. Osman?
Well, actually, I would agree to some extent with Sabir's comment, and I just want to clarify that it is about that interpretation or that thought of school of Islam or so that actually use religious slogans to power, and use the same slogans to continue oppressing people and to continue even now killing people in the name of that thought. So I would say it is actually a school of thought that has been, of Islamic thought, that has been dominating the scene over the last 30 years.
Allow me to bring Mr.
But one thing before you leave that, it seems like even that sort of thought has been lost from the very early days. It becomes actually a full-scale dictatorship.
That's what I wanted to ask, because we've seen the Communist Party, the Sudanese Communist Party, now entering the fray and being part of this coalition. Your thoughts on that, Mr.
I think when we're talking about political Islam and how it's been deployed, I think, you know, we need to be very careful. For example, many of the initial supporters of al-Bashir in 1989, such as the main ideologue, Turabi, who was put in jail a good few times for his opposition to al-Bashir. So as Dr. Bashir says, what brought him to power was very different, or what, you know, it changed during his rule. It's now called the National Congress Party. It doesn't have an ideology in that sense. It's actually more nationalist and more Arabist, leftist.
Right? I think I differ with
but in saying so,
I think it's unfair to say that, you know, we are Sudanese, we know our crisis more than you, precisely. So please put things in context. Contextualization of the crisis of history of Sudan, that we inherited post-colonial state have got a problem. From the very beginning, we have a war in 1955. Before even independence. Why you have war? Because we have a failure of elite, selfish elite, inherited the post-colonial. They failed totally to put our house in order. We have war from the very beginning. The separation of South Sudan is part and parcel of that. We failed. Up to now, we don't have a constitution in Sudan. No, could you believe it? We don't have a constitution for 6 years.
I mean, Sudan, and this is, you know, many analysts would do agree that it's been an elite. You know, the political system has been very elite dominated since independence.
Okay. Dr.
And
Osman,
that has disempowered in a
I'd
sense
like to
and
also focus on the current situation. There are accusations of economic mismanagement. Would you agree?
Well, I would agree with that, but in our understanding, it is actually a manifestation of the political problem. Okay. Sudan's problem is mainly political, that manifested as complete economic failure of a state apparatus, and even failure of keeping the image of Sudan as we all wish to have. So it is actually, so this is why actually the current revolution is asking for a complete demolition of the regime and the absolute non-negotiated step down of Omar al-Bashir and his junta.
And to add what Bashir said, he put it right. It's ostensibly that it looks like this is a political and economic crisis, but it's a political from first place. To how long to go away from that political?
And
how we get out
and this
from
is my
that?
question. Does it have its roots deep in society, deep in the political system, deep in the political parties?
Absolutely.
That a transitional government, would it change anything?
Well, Mr. Biso, you see, the issue for us, issue of establishing foundation of New Sudan. How we as a Sudanese to really sit and round table and say, let us bygone be bygones, and we establish Sudan from scratch. We have never had that meetings together, other Sudanese. So to start with, we don't have a constitution for 60 years. Everybody comes with their own government, with their own constitution, and looting and corrupt and go. So we need to start Sudan from the beginning.
Mr. Dean, the protesters are saying some of that looks like the dissolution of both chambers of parliament and appoint a consensual transitional council which will see all parties granted equal representation. Is that likely, though?
I mean, I think when we look at the Sudanese, the current protests, we also need to look at the regional context. And I think the domestic pressure is unprecedented. That's a certainty. It's very wide scale. You know, it's even within the NCP. Unfortunately, in the context currently, the Sudanese do have, or the al-Bashir government has support from the US, which has taken it off its terrorist, which has weakened the embargo in 2017 in the process of taking it off the terrorist list. The Chinese, which are very, interested in Sudanese oil and Sudanese oil facilities to pump out the oil from South Sudan, from Juba, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Saudis, because of Sudan's, al-Bashir's ability to play regional conflicts, and also the Ethiopians, because South Sudan was a key participant in the recent peace process. So domestically, the pressure is unprecedented. Regionally, whether or not these other countries around him will allow for a change is a different story.
Dr. Osman?
Well, I believe in the people's will. I mean, this is really unprecedented, as you have said in your introduction. The number of people who are out, the number of people who are joining the revolution every day, the number of people who are jumping ship from the ruling coalition.
Would the external or the regional politics allow the people's will, though? Let's talk about Yemen, let's talk about Egypt, countries which are said to be complicit in part of
Well, I don't think we can ignore that. But I mean, the unity that is now happening in Sudan had never been before. Sabir has mentioned the political parties, but I would want to add to that the unity among the marchers, among the young people, among the masses, is unprecedented.
All right.
And despite the brutality, despite the killing, despite the detention of thousands of people, including political
let's allow Mr. Sadi
to add what Bashir said, that we as a Sudanese, we have a history in terms of overthrown dictators. 1964 we threw Aboud. 1985 we threw Nimeri. So we know how to do it, even if the external factors cannot bar us not to get rid of Bashir. Take it clear from you.
And I'm sure they will come by.
And unfortunately, that's where we have to leave it with you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights. That is Ibrahim Dean to my left from the Afro-Middle East Center, Dr. Bashir Osman to his immediate left, the Sudan Solidarity Group in South Africa, and Sabir Abu Sadia from SPLM North in Sudan. And do keep tuned to African Perspective and SABC News. We do hopefully look forward to discussing more in Cote d'Ivoire, the situation there, and hopefully with former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, to just outline what developments will be. As you know, that next week we'll ask whether former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo will be returning home, and if so, what are the prospects there. But for now, The Globe is up next. Thank you so much for joining.